Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Rife.
I'm Alex Dow.
And we are here today to talk about our final Best Picture nominee from this year's Oscars. That would be Taika Waititi's anti-hate satire. They had to put it on the posters because it's 2020. You have to clarify such things. Jojo Rabbit.
Welcome to Film Club. So I remember when this movie was first announced.
Right.
So we're talking about Jojo Rabbit today. It's Taika Waititi's movie about Nazi Germany and about a young boy who is in the Hitler Youth and the crisis of conscience he goes through eventually.
You know, he's in this bubble of Nazism, and then he realizes.
Right, as many people in Nazi Germany were, of course. So when the film was announced, it was announced that he was making a satire about Nazi Germany, and that he was going to be playing Hitler in it, and it was this sort of immediate source of controversy. And Disney was publicly expressing some trepidation about releasing a film with this premise. Having now seen the movie, it's hard for me to imagine this movie being a source of controversy at all.
Well, the funny thing is it's not the first movie to take this kind of approach. It didn't really translate over here to the US, but there was a novel and a movie called He's Back in Germany, and the premise is that Hitler just like shows back up in modern day Germany. And so that was a more incisive satire than Jojo Rabbit, actually.
Well, I mean, people have been making fun of Hitler since Hitler was alive.
Yeah, true.
You know? And the question of, is it possible to satirize the Nazis, and is it possible to satirize Hitler? How tasteful is that? Those kind of questions, we've been asking that since World War II.
Yeah.
And I watched this thing, and I think that this is a movie that it came into this world as such a hot topic of conversation, of controversy, but I think it's one that's actually pretty safe in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I very much agree. I was very excited for this film because I normally love Taika Waititi's work. I love his sense of humor and everything, but I don't think that his sense of humor really translated to this film all that much. I think all the satire is very basic. It's sub-SNL, har, look, this Nazis farting, just kind of childish stuff. And I've heard people from the film say like, oh, well, the point is that it's just one big fart joke. But in execution, it doesn't feel insightful.
So Waititi, we should mention who he is, for those who don't know. He's a New Zealand writer-director, a comedian. He worked on Flight of the Conchords. His feature debut was What We Do in the Shadows.
One of my favorite films of the last decade.
It's
one
very
of my
funny.
favorite comedies. I love that movie.
It's a mockumentary about vampires living together who are roommates.
Like, that movie was sharper than Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, yeah, certainly funnier.
Yeah.
You know? And he went on from there to make Hunt for the Wilder People, which is cute. He made kind of a big leap into studio filmmaking he did the third Thor film, Thor Ragnarok, which I quite enjoy. As far as the Marvel films go, I think that one has a very pronounced sense of humor.
It's one of the ones I watched.
Okay.
I didn't follow all of it, but I liked it.
Yeah. So I didn't hate the idea of him tackling the subject matter necessarily, but to me, what Jojo Rabbit strikes me as, it's not a surprise to me that it's up for multiple Oscars, because to me it strikes me as actually a fairly conventional and fairly safe Holocaust drama of the type that we've been seeing since, at least since Schindler's List sort of popularized that genre.
It is such a 90s genre.
Yeah.
You know,
it's
and
like
leading up
something
to
like
Life
The Boy
is
in the
Beautiful.
Striped Pajamas or something, you know? I mean, basically, if you took out the jokes from this film, if you took out all his sense of humor, and I know some would say that, well, you can't really do that with a comedy, but if you removed his sensibility, this thing would conform to the template of a best foreign language Oscar winner.
Oh, 100%. If you took out the comedy, this would have been a 90s Miramax release. The trailer would have played before Shakespeare in Love on the VHS. 100%.
So for the first 30 minutes or something, this thing is pretty goofball and zany.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he goes to a summer camp that's sort of Wes Anderson-ish summer camp where there's these doltish Nazis played by Rebel Wilson.
Wes Anderson, but make it fascist.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and Sam Rockwell's there doing sort of droll, sardonic, dumb Nazi shtick, you know.
Yeah.
But the movie's plot doesn't really kick in until maybe a half an hour in, where our young character Jojo discovers in his attic that his mother, played by Scarlett Johansson, who's sort of like the wokest Hausfrau of 1945 or something.
Yes. I mean, there were...
Basically has like Elizabeth Warren's politics, but in 1945.
There were, resistors within Germany. That's true.
There were. There absolutely were. But so he discovers that his mother has been housing a Jewish teenager, played by Thomasin McKenzie from Leave No Trace. And the film becomes about this budding friendship between the two of them and how that complicates his position as somebody who's pro-Hitler.
I was going to say, do you think it would challenge some of his preconceived notions to actually meet a Jewish person in real life? We shall see.
And in many respects, I feel like that plot could come out of 1,000 other Holocaust dramas.
Oh, 100%.
The argument you can make for it is that the comedy sort of punches this up a little bit, and that it makes it feel different. But I don't know how well they gel, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think that the two gel very well at all. I think that they are kind of two different things side by side in the same movie, and sort of with the hopes that one will legitimize the other in a way, but they're not connected in any significant way, and so it does just feel like two ideas in one. And neither one of them, it's not an especially incisive satire, as I mentioned before, and it's not an especially moving drama either.
Yeah.
Because it is so typical, like you said.
Quite literally, his sensibility has been grafted onto this. It's based on a novel called Caging Skies.
Right.
I haven't read the novel, but my understanding is that there is a touch of comic sensibility to it, but it's much less pronounced than what Taika Waititi brings to it. One of the big hooks is that our young character, he's a young boy who's in the Hitler Youth. He really loves the pageantry of it. That's sort of what draws him to it. He has an imaginary friend. His imaginary friend is Hitler, played by Waititi himself.
Yeah, and a very big, goofy, broad performance, which is one of the things I liked the most about this movie.
Sure.
Is how he plays Hitler sort of as if you were watching a children's cartoon and a kid had a friend who was an imaginary bear. That's kind of how he plays Hitler.
I think what he's kind of doing is he's like an anachronistic millennial gossip or something.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't take credit for this. Somebody described him as a mean girl.
Oh, that's funny.
Kind of what he's doing as Hitler.
Yeah.
And that shtick, I laughed a couple times at it, but I think it's also pretty one note.
Right. It worked for me at first, but yeah, it's one note, as most of the satire in this film is. It's very one note. And there's just some aspects of it that struck me as childish in a way that I felt like was disappointing. Yeah. Because I know that everyone involved is capable of much sharper stuff. You mentioned all Waititi's film work, which I mostly enjoy, but I also really like his TV work. He's directed some episodes of the What We Do in the Shadows TV show, which is great. And he directed the season finale of The Mandalorian, which was excellent.
Okay.
So I just don't feel like I don't know if it's in some sort of bid for awards prestige, or you have to do it this way if you want it to be a quote-unquote serious film. But I just feel as though maybe it's adapting someone else's material, but I just felt as though he kind of dumbed himself down for this one.
I'm not bothered by the comedy in it. I think the comedy is fine. I think the real issue for me with this film is that I think it kind of lets Nazis off the hook. This is a film that kind of bends over backwards to make all of them look buffoonish, which many of them surely were.
Sure.
Actual buffoons. But it bends over backwards to forgive some of them. There are various characters in this film that are Nazis, and I feel like you can count on one hand the number of characters in this film, a film, again, about Nazi Germany, who are actually malicious.
Right.
Yeah. Characters.
Sinister.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stephen Merchant's character is sinister, but he kind of shows up halfway through.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But even he's kind of a goofy Monty Python caricature of a character. And again, that's the comic framework of the film.
Sure.
I understand that. And some would say that you diminish the power of fascism by making them look as ridiculous as they are. But then you look at something like BlacKkKlansman that does a really, really good job. That's Spike Lee's film. That is a film that really strikes that balance very well of being like, the KKK are buffoons. These are idiots.
Right.
But they're dangerous too.
Yes.
They're dangerous. And it's not like Jojo Rabbit denies violence. There is some real violence in the film, and not every character in this movie walks out alive. But the movie seems to bend over backwards to basically almost portray the entire country as this is a country that got swept up in this fever, and even people who were part of the party, who were part of the Nazi party, are just kind of well-meaning idiots who got roped into this. So, I mean, we've had a lot of movies about how horrible the Holocaust was and about horrible Nazis are. Maybe it's okay that we have one that's a softer depiction, but I don't know. I mean, I think this thing wants to be relevant to what's going on right now. We're seeing a kind of a new rise of fascist groups.
Yeah, all over the world.
Nazis are back, you know. Maybe they never left, but they're back in the spotlight. And I think that you're right that we can't really hold it against Taika Waititi that the movie is being advertised as an anti-hate satire. It's barely a satire. I mean, satire provokes, and I don't think this thing is interested in provoking.
No.
This is a movie about Nazism that an actual Nazi could sit down and watch and not feel offended by. Okay, folks, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. This is actually the last in a series we've been doing for the last couple weeks on the Best Picture nominees. You can catch up with all the previous ones that are available on the website and also on YouTube. We've talked about all the Best Picture nominees at this point. Film Club also has a podcast version. Yep. And this week we are pairing our discussion of Parasite with the discussion you just watched of Jojo Rabbit. We're also going to be talking about what we think is going to win Best Picture on Sunday and what we would love to see win.
Alex, is that audio-only bonus content you're talking about
It
there?
sure is, Katie. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye.